Welcome, Bronco Nation, to another exciting video. I know I say that at almost the beginning of every single video I make, but this one carries additional meaning because today we have Jeramiah Dickey on, the athletic director of Boise State. He was hired in 2021. He recently just got a contract extension, which I know myself and the rest of Bronco Nation were incredibly excited about. And one of the reasons we were so excited about that is because he has done such an incredible job of building the Boise State brand while he has been here. Three consecutive seasons, he's raised over $20 million, 71 million total between 2022 and 2024. Last year, record-setting amount of 26.1 million. Season ticket sales, which were in a decline prior to his hiring, have increased every single year. And last year, and this season so far, they've sold over 19,500 season tickets. And a big part of that, even though the schedule, the record hasn't been necessarily what fans want, the stadium experience has just been so improved. He's done great things with the concessions, the new light experience. If you have not been out to a Boise State game in a year, I think last year's when they put those in. If you've not been out to Boise State game in a couple of years, you need to make sure you get to one this fall because I've got to tell you, whatever happens in the game, just getting to be there for a late night kickoff and seeing those lights flash, it is absolutely incredible. It's a show in and of itself, and then you also get to watch a football game. He's done great things improving the game day experience. There's some new stuff this year that they're making some new opportunities for fans. Of course, you've got the North End Zone project. He's done so many incredible things, and today we have the honor to have him on the show. We're going to talk about him coming to Boise State, some of the things he's done here, and then what the future of this program looks like, or as he loves to say, what's next. Thanks so much for coming on, JD.
Jacob, thanks for having me. I'm excited, and you're a big part of all this as a member of Bronco Nation, and very much appreciate the opportunity to be on.
Well, this is going to be a great discussion. Let's start all the way at the beginning. So, before you've even gotten to Boise State, before you've even gotten into becoming an athletic director, what drew you to the athletic director career field?
Yeah, I maybe like most kids, and maybe that's why my why is so important. Life comes at you fast, and growing up and playing sports, and I was fortunate to I was a solid player and played high school sports and whatever, and but then you realize there is no next level for myself, and that's okay. I had a great time and it was a good experience, and those seeds of being a part of a team and leading, and it was really planted then, and growing up around sport. My grandfather was a team doctor at UTEP, and so I remember as a very young child, my first memories were at UTEP basketball and football games, and so it's always been a part of my relationship with my dad, my grandparents, my uncle and grandmother. It was a family affair. We would always go to games. Well, then you get to college, and I really didn't know this career path existed, and
Hmm.
because I'd reached that crossroads in my college career of, all right, I've changed my major like 6 times. I wasn't killing it in the classroom, and I was leaning towards taking a semester off, and that would have been the worst decision of my life. And my mom and my aunt, cared about me more than I cared about myself, and said, don't do that yet. We want you to meet these people. And those people ended up being mentors and friends still today. And really opened my eyes to a career that I didn't know existed. Back in the day, yeah, there was ESPN, but you didn't really hear a lot about ADs. I was probably like most fans, you just show up to the game and it's like, oh, that's cool. Like they happen to be playing, and,
Right.
and the band's here and the cheerleaders, and, but so much time, energy, and effort goes into putting on an event. And even back then, and having mentors like a Mac Rhodes and, Chris Bloomfield was someone else, who's still in the industry, really opened my eyes that, there was a path for me. And I'm very goal driven. And I think that's probably why I struggled a little bit in college. High school was one
Hmm.
thing, but once you get to college, I didn't really have that carrot that was driving me forward. And I'm competitive and very ambitious. And all to say, Max showed me a path that I'm extremely grateful for. And I remember going to visit him. I worked a basketball camp, and I was all Austined out. I was at UT, and so I don't look like I do today. I was enjoying my time in Austin, and I remember I've never asked him to this day what he thought of me when I walked into his office with long hair and earrings, and it was I was a completely different dude at that point. But by the grace of God, man, he saw something in me that I didn't know I had. And he told me about his path and said, Jeremiah, like, go back to Texas and change your major. And, if this is what you want to do, you can do it. And sometimes you need that, motivation or support, when you're questioning, yourself. And I went back to UT. I changed my major. I got into sport administration. And, I said earlier, I wasn't killing in the classroom, but, once I locked in on something that really pulled at the heartstrings, school became more of a priority. I started working every UT athletic event I possibly could. I interned in the marketing and promotions department. I interned for the equivalent of Learfield. It was host communications at the time. So sponsorships. And upon graduation, Mac had said, when you graduate, call me and I'll give you an internship. And my family was still back in El Paso, and he was at UTEP, obviously. And I called him and said, I want to be an AD and I need an internship. I had it. I needed to have it to finish my degree program. And he said, all right, I'll call you back. And 24 hours later, he called me and said, you start July 21st. And this was 2003. And the rest is history, and it's amazing the people that are put in your life along the way that don't nearly get enough credit. I'm not an outlier. I had a lot of people help me. And as I said before, they saw something in me that maybe I wasn't confident enough at that point to see in myself. And it really, defined a direction for my life. And I'm really grateful, and so started at UTEP and obviously went to the University of Akron, University of Houston from there, and then Baylor, and very fortunate to be a Bronco.
Well, that direction for your life, like you said, took you to several different places before Boise State, but then the opportunity to come to Boise came knocking. What was it specifically that drew you to the blue out of maybe other opportunities that were out there? What was it about Boise State that specifically interested you when you heard about this opportunity?
So it was interesting when I was at UTEP. We were following Boise State,
Hmm.
right before I got to UTEP in 2003. I say right before, I think it was 2001. I believe UTEP, maybe in 2000, but UTEP played Boise State in the Humanitarian Bowl, I think it was called at
Hmm.
the point. And so I had a jersey of one of the players. I still have it to this day with that Humanitarian Bowl patch on. I have it framed, and so very young, or at least early in my career, I was following what Boise State was doing.
Hmm.
And the blue obviously was attractive, and I grew up orange and blue, so there were some
Yeah.
common themes that and I was a fan. I've always been
Hmm.
a fan, and seeing the success from a program I know it didn't happen overnight, but it's like all of a
Hmm.
sudden Boise State's on everyone's TV, and I'm like, who's Boise State, right? Like, where did this come from? And so that started like at a young age, at least in my career at UTEP. And over the course of time, I remember meeting with Bob Madden, Bronco Bob. He came through, Boise State was coming through town, and I forget who they were playing. They were either at a bowl game or they were playing New Mexico State. But I remember going out there with a good friend who's actually at UTSA now, and we went to go have breakfast with Bronco Bob, and just to hear how they had set up their letter winners, association, and some of the things they were doing fundraising wise, tailgating, so on and so forth. And I'm always learning, and so it was a really cool experience. And so I got to meet him, and then over the course of my career, Boise State was just always there. When I was at the University of Houston, we were following them. We also went to the Big East for 24 hours, at the University of Houston, and so it was just always top of mind. And when you first think about becoming an AD, there's certain paths, maybe say traditional paths, that
Hmm.
I never thought I would have an opportunity to be an AD at a place like this.
Hmm.
And I think everyone's heard the story of, I had finally come to a place in my career that I knew, one, being an AD was going to be very challenging. And two, my family was happy in Waco. And three, for the first time ever, the job didn't define me. And
Hmm.
I found some peace and comfort in that. And that was the beginning of December 2020. And I ended up getting a call December 26th, that this job is open. I knew it was open or going to open, but everyone in the industry said the spring. So I just wasn't really thinking about it. But this was right around the time Parse was, he had just gotten the Auburn job, and it just, everything happens for a reason. I do
Hmm.
believe that. And timing is important. And, so when they called, I, excuse me, I knew enough about Boise State. Obviously, I'd never been here. I'd never been to Idaho. But I knew enough, and I knew about their history and tradition and success. And, it was always important to me, to be an AD where it mattered. And I knew the traditional path may take me to another group of five type school or an FCS. But I'm a competitor, and if you're going to do this, I want to win. I want to compete. And the hardest thing to build is a brand. And Boise State had done that. And, the fact that I was being called for that job, one, was extremely humbling because I'd never been an AD. And there are a lot of great ADs out there. There's a lot of great potential ADs, people that were like me, number twos at Power Fours and so on and so forth. So I didn't take that for granted. But, as I talked to my wife and understanding we weren't going to get flown out and go through a traditional interview process, a lot of it was based on Google. A lot of it was based on me talking to friends in the industry that had either played in the Potato Bowl at some point in time or had come up to Boise for whatever reason. And that was the first time I had gotten connected with Mark Coyle, and
Hmm.
very highly of him. And he did a great job while he was here. And it really relieved some of the pressure because my family is extremely important to me. At this point in time, it's not like those other moves that I said where I either wasn't married or we had very young kids, babies, a baby or two, and this was the first time that I knew it was going to impact the whole family.
Hmm.
And so it was important to hear from people that, ultimately I had no reason not to trust Mark. I didn't really know Mark, but I had heard such great things about Mark that what he said, it really weighed heavily on me, that this place was an amazing place. And Jeremiah, you would not regret it. And the people are amazing. The community is amazing.
Hmm.
The nation, like he was very positive and just it relieved a lot for me because I just wasn't going to be able to come see it before.
Hmm.
And obviously we were in COVID and all that. So, that was a big piece of it. It relieved some pressure, allowed my wife and I to have some serious conversation. And the way these processes go down, you don't have a lot of time. I got
Hmm.
called on the 26th. I accepted the job on the 31st. I
Wow.
interviewed twice, 2 1-hour interviews on Zoom, one with a committee that lasted about an hour, and then one with the president and someone else from our team on campus, and honestly, I didn't think I interviewed all that well. It was the first time, which, I've probably told this story before, but I never interviewed for an AD job. I had only applied for
Hmm.
one because a search firm had asked me to. And then they told me, JD, you're probably not going to get it, but we want to see your material. And that's part of the process. And that was fine with me. But there really wasn't one that rose for me. And this was one of those that did, but this was the first time I had ever interviewed for one. And so I'm really hard on myself. I did not think I did a good job in the committee Zoom. I thought I did a much better job with the president. And it was funny. The search firm called me and said, hey JD, like I think you're going to get this job. And I, let me take a step back. After I did the committee interview, I remember calling my dad because I was bummed. I'm big on God opens doors. Your job's to walk through them, and felt like this door was open, and I just stubbed my toe as I stumbled through it. And he said, "Your steps are determined, and if it's meant to be, you're going to get this job, and if it's not, what's next?" And that's always how he's been with me. And it was so powerful for me to have that type of support because I was kind of in the muck of, I just totally screwed this up. And it gave me some confidence that going in the meeting with the president that, I felt really good coming out of it. And the search firm called and said, JD, get prepared that you're going to get offered, and your wife have to be prepared to accept this. And at that point, I had called mentors and said, look, I want to run out every ground ball. And am I stupid if I take this or not take it? Like,
Hmm.
what does that look?
Right.
Not necessarily having gone through that process before. And unanimously, some people that I care very much about said, JD, this is a great job. And if they offer it, you need to consider this. And that's hard. I'm not, I'm a creature of habit, I'm a grinder and I love what we were doing at Baylor. And like I said, my family loved it, but it was something that was put on my heart and it meant a lot in terms of seeing how, because I got on social, I did my research in terms of the facilities and other things. And I know any job is going to be challenging, but I felt really confident that this was what God wanted for my family and I, and I ended up getting offered, and it happened quickly, and I was here within 3 days and doing my first interview, but the rest is history. And I'm really grateful, for those doors.
When you step foot on Boise State's campus and walk through those doors, and you're now the athletic director at Boise State, what was your vision for the program that you're now running and for yourself as an athletic director at Boise State? And has that vision changed over time while you've been here the last few years?
No, the vision's been pretty consistent. What's changed is maybe how we do it. And, one, arriving to campus, it was beautiful,
Hmm.
and it snowed the night before, I think, when we arrived. And so there's snow on the mountains. And, I've always wanted to be somewhere where there's four seasons and it was green and just, I mean, Boise is a postcard, right? Like, it's an amazing place. And I hadn't even gone out up into the mountains, right? Like I'm just down in the valley. And so one, it was extremely beautiful. And two, walking around campus, the way my mind works, I just saw opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. And, you get through that first week, but really honing in on the conversations with the donors and our staff. And I met with every staff member, and I met with as many donors as I possibly could. I met with sponsors, and it was less about who I am. There's a little bit of that, but it was more about what did they want? What did they
Hmm.
want out of this experience? What did they want out of Boise State?
Hmm.
Obviously they've been Broncos a lot longer than I had. And it's one thing, a lot of times ADs come in and it's like, this is what we're gonna do and how we're gonna do it, and they go. And I'm not saying that's bad, but I probably, I didn't want to take that approach. I'm stubborn to a certain extent, but I knew whatever I wanted, it didn't matter if that wasn't what the fan base and our institution and our community needed. And so I had to align with Bronco Nation. And a lot of those conversations allowed me to ask a lot of probably dumb questions, and when you look at the changing landscape of our industry and the successes that we had had in the past and the brand and what was everyone's expectation, and that really allowed me to hone in on what I felt we could accomplish here.
Hmm.
And then in the meantime, you're talking to all staff and you're seeing opportunities. You're seeing that we don't necessarily have the social media presence, or our website needed to be upgraded, and those are little things in the whole grand scheme of things, but it does tie into telling our story, and it does tie into a greater purpose, and
Hmm.
looking at our student athlete development and support, and looking at our health and wellness, and in a lot of areas we're doing really good work. It's just what I noticed very early on is there really wasn't a specific vision, intern direction for the department. And my job as a leader was to define that. And it really started to come into play. I mean, I was here for the first couple months without my family, and I spent a lot of time in the office by myself and just whiteboarding things. All right, what if I did this? What if that? I heard this from these 10 people, and what does that look like? How do I put a metrics on it? And you go to work. And it was amazing to see just how it kind of in my mind, it all came together. It's like, all right, here's what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And here's how, I'm going to bring in people to impact X, Y, or Z area. And I did not come in with the intent, I know we've had a lot of transition. That was never the intent. My job was to drive the bus and show everyone where their seat was on the bus. And they had a choice. They could be, on the bus or not. I wasn't, can't buy loyalty, and I didn't want to force anyone. But I first and foremost knew that I needed people that wanted to be Broncos first and foremost, and not just live in this amazing community. I was here because I wanted to be a Bronco. That was ancillary and a benefit of being here, but I needed Broncos, and that really started, bringing in Jake Mankin and Cody Gogler and promoting Heather and hiring Nate Burke and you go down this list, and I think we had 150 staff at that point. We have 225 now, and really investing into the MAL program, because I saw very early on that we didn't have necessarily a pipeline, and it was getting really expensive to live here, which was a competitive advantage for us in the past. And we had to develop that pipeline, because graduate assistants traditionally have roommates and aren't married and don't have kids. And it's like, all right, how do we get them more involved, and how do we expand on that program? Because what Coach Pete and Scott and some of those guys had created many years ago, it's an outstanding program. Let's take advantage of that. And so it's just, you kind of go into this, and in my, I have all these balls in the air, and every day I would concentrate on one. How do we move this forward? And ultimately I started with the external space, and then pivoted to the internal space, because I knew I needed to drive money to be able to invest and build up our infrastructure. And so far, I feel, and I always say, plan the work the plan. We have stuck to that plan. It created the What's Next initiative, the Playbook for Success, and we're off and running. My goal was to turn the ship much quicker than anyone ever has, and I feel like we've made a lot of progress. Obviously not perfect, and there's things that we could have done better, and that's on me. That's on no one else. But while a new AD is learning who he is and how he's going to do things, they don't give you a book, and so there's a lot of learning experiences along the way for me. Of I wouldn't do it that way again, or hindsight's everything. But that's just life, and being human. And I felt like if I could be authentic and empathetic, and align with what everyone else wanted and needed from me and our team, that we could do epic. And I still believe that.
Well, a big culmination, at least external to the fans, of that vision was the Athletic Master Village. Can you talk briefly about some of the inspiration for that, and what the long-term goals of that project are?
Yeah. So when you look at the Playbook for Success, it started with me doing tours of all our facilities. And I had teammates here that walked me through, and I had to, sometimes you can't just move. You got to understand why you're at the position you are, and then you figure out how to move. And I had to do that much quicker, because we were navigating so many different things. And so I walked all our facilities, and there were fundamentals, based on the experiences and the mentors I had over the course of my career, that aligned with our What's Next initiative, and ultimately dominoed into this Playbook for Success. We couldn't be stagnant. We had to move the bar, and we had to improve on the staff, the student athlete, and our supporters' experience. And so when you go through Albertson Stadium, and you see that there's congestion issues on the east side, or that the lights, that our team is having to get here at 2 a.m. in the morning to warm them up, and that they don't always work. And the sound system, and the video boards, and it's everything seemed clear. It's like, all right, we're gonna bring someone in who's an expert in this space, and we're gonna walk these facilities with them. I have a good idea of what I expect and want out of this, along with my teammates, and really have them lead us and organize us through that process. And I'm glad we did it when we did. I know that not every project on there is going to get done, within the next 3 to 5 years. It may take 10, but you look at a lot of the progress that we've made, and it ties into that Playbook for Success. We had to improve BOAS. We had to improve DLP. We had to improve Albertson Stadium and our athletic footprint. I still want to bring sport programs closer to the heart of the operation in terms of the varsity center, but that's going to take some time. It's what can we do now? And that tied into the vision around fundraising and how we set up BA and the infrastructure to support that. And so it was a really cool process, because it gave everyone a clear vision of, all right, here's our expectation, and here's where we're at. Every decision we make is going to tie into this What's Next initiative. And if it pertains to a capital project, it's going to tie into the Playbook for Success. And we're just going to keep chipping away. And in some ways it may be lipstick on a pig, and that's fine. That's part of the process, but movement creates opportunity and allows you the ability to pivot. And we needed to create those opportunities. And now you look 3.5 years later, that we just did the largest locker room refurbishment in our history. The 3 new video boards. One, we moved from football to softball. Lights at 2 different facilities. We started, which was the brand assessment. We did that a year later after that Playbook for Success. We're now chipping away at the brand assessment, and you're going to see more of our updated logos. And we have to tell our story. We have to, actively promote that. And, there's two big, things that it's a good reminder for me. We're not a finished product, and nor will we ever be as long as I'm here. We're going to continue to move forward. And, those two logos are on stickle. They're not the correct logos. And it bothers me, but it's also that carrot that drives me to say, all right, we're not done. We have more work to do. And, and I'm really proud of our team because I hit the ground running and they, in some ways, had to play catch up. And now, I finally feel like we're all locked arms and ready to accomplish, what many may say is unrealistic, but I believe in the process and I believe in who we are and I believe in Bronco Nation. And I think, anything you put your mind to, you can do it. And, and early on, I had to believe 4 people, maybe, including donors. Now it's like, okay, I can see it. There's actual visual improvement in terms of what we're building. And that creates buy-in and momentum. And, and now you're seeing us pivot to the north end zone and extra mile I've talked about quite a bit, and Aux Gym, and upgrading that for Gordy and Leon, because that's important to us. And, getting a sport court for volleyball that's going to allow us to play matches in extra mile. And, those are important things. And we're going to keep going.
Well, none of those things just arise out of nowhere. You have to get the fundraising piece done first. And a big part of that is both connecting with the boosters and connecting with the fan base. And you've been incredibly successful with both of those, as apparent by the increase in BAA membership and an increase in fundraising overall. And obviously by your social media presence. I don't know if we've ever seen an athletic director who's so engaged. Somebody with 20 followers will tag you and say, hey, I have a question, and you'll reply. And I don't know if I've ever seen that happen with an athletic director in the past. Obviously, coming in, new job, new position, not having been athletic director before, what drove your approach to connecting with the fan bases and the boosters in maybe a unique way that hadn't been replicated before?
That's always been important to me. And I don't think of myself, I don't feel any different just because I have this AD title and, I want us to win. I want to compete. And I feel there's a duty, a responsibility that I have to Bronco Nation and my people, to be available, and it may not be immediately, but I try to get to everyone's comments. And I think that was something as I talked to those sponsors and donors and staff, and, I felt like we had these walls up around the department. What we do is fun. It should be. And we're passionate about it, and we're competing, and we're serving, and we're preparing student athletes for life. And what we do is extremely beneficial, to our community, being the front porch. And I know in my chair and with the hat I wear that that's important. And I never want to be, too good or I like to consider myself a pretty humble guy. And I know that Bronco Nation is a big part of this. I can't do it alone. It's not my goals, it's our goals. And, how do we do this together? Well, part of that is my connection back to them. And I want to be a transparent department. I want to communicate as much as I possibly can. I think that's important. And, I think sometimes, maybe, ADs I've been with in the past, it's, this level of importance that separates them from their people. And that's just not who I am. And obviously it takes a lot of work. I created a monster, maybe. I didn't, that wasn't my intent, but I know that's something that Bronco Nation appreciates. I know that my staff probably doesn't always appreciate, because I put stuff out sometimes that I shouldn't, but they help me with that. And I'm getting better at like texting before I put something out. I'll text my team and say, hey, has this been out yet? No, Jeremiah, and we're putting that out on Tuesday. I'm like, all right, I won't put anything out, because it's just the mindset. Like, momentum is important to us, and we have to keep the momentum. We can't control wins and losses. We can control how we impact wins and losses. And part of that is how we tell our story. I want Bronco Nation. I mean, today we promoted women's soccer in their new locker rooms, and beach volleyball in their new locker rooms. And like, that's important to us. And and some, I see the great things our team is doing, and it's more about them to help show Bronco Nation, like, it's not me, it's us. And there are a lot of people that are working towards this, and I have a platform that maybe others don't. And it gives me an opportunity to celebrate those that are supporting us, celebrate the progress that's being made, celebrate my teammates, and give them credit. And that was big for me. I told them when I got here, I will take all the blame. You get all the credit. That's my job. I'm a leader, and that's what a leader is, in my opinion. And I still try to uphold that to this day. And that's something that's important to me because I don't feel any different, man. Like every day it's a dream. Like I wake up and I get to do what I love, and I can't do it alone. My wife and my kids and everyone who supports me through that. But I think that's a big part of why I connect so much with Bronco Nation.
Well, it's not all Will Ferrell gifs and posting hashtag what's next on Twitter. Sometimes you do have to make a decision that has a permanent impact or a long-term impact on the school. And so one of those, which we're not going to go into the reasons why or anything like that, but obviously Andy Avalos has to leave the program November 12th, and now you've got to go and hire a new head coach. And so we're going to shift from talking about what's happened to a little bit now what's happened present to talking about the future. So for November 12th to December 3rd, about 3 weeks, it's a lengthy process, very in-depth. A lot of candidates are looked at, some candidates that are even at other Mountain West schools now. And after the Mountain West Championship game, Spencer Danielson is announced as the head coach. Can you talk about what the driving factors were for hiring Spencer Danielson as the head coach at Boise State and what impact the players' voices had in that decision?
Excuse me. Absolutely. Obviously that was an extremely uncomfortable time. It's the worst decision, one of the worst, but so far it's probably the worst decision that I've had to make. When you go a different direction from someone, and it's not personal, but it is, right? Like you try not to make it, but that was very challenging. But similar, and I know Spencer said this recently, and Leon, ultimately we're held accountable to the decisions we make or don't make.
Mm.
And as the leader of a department and something so much bigger than myself, I felt that a decision needed to be made. And ultimately, when you start going through that process, you understand. It's like I silo things. It's like, all right, I got to get through this game, and ultimately here's the decision, and then next is getting a search firm and starting the search. And in the process, I obviously had to ask Spencer to be the interim, and he was the interim when I got here, and so I had known Spencer for quite a while, or at least for 3+ years at that point. And I brought him in and said, Spencer, I need you to lead this team to the end of the season. Do the best you can. I can't make any promises. If you're interested in this job, great. If you're not, great. It's going to be extremely hard for me to hire someone internally, and I try to be transparent and as I would want someone to be with me. And so there was not a thought in my mind that he was going to be our next head coach. And it wasn't anything personal to Spencer. I think the world is Spencer. It had nothing to do with that. It was that I was trying to change a culture, a direction, and I fully expected to go outside, what I would call the Bronco family. And you go through that, and because it was in season, you still have games, and you're concerned about the kids and making sure that we're doing everything we can to pour into them. And obviously I'm the sport program administrator for football, and so I'm talking to Spencer daily basis and figuring out how's it look going into this game and the things that we're doing. And there's always challenges. You got 110 student athletes, and but you're having these conversations while I'm going through this very national search and interviewing other candidates. But I was always calling Spencer and checking in, and how's this, and how can I help, and in various things, whether it was a kid who needed eligibility or a recruit potentially coming in, and offers that we had made previously, and signing day was coming up, and there was just a lot. But that gave me an opportunity to see how he worked. Ultimately, as a defensive coordinator, my contact with him was more in the hallway and hey, Spence, how's your family, and those type of things. I wasn't talking work with him, but I got to during that. And as I was interviewing people and having these conversations, ultimately it got to a place that Spencer said, JD, I want to interview for it. And I said, all right, and I, at this point, I'm more excited than I was at the start of all of this, right? And Spencer ended up, and you try to balance, like an interview's an interview, and it doesn't mean he's going to be good or bad at his job, right? Or anyone who goes through that process. But I'd seen things play out on the field and off the field with him, he had earned the right to interview for the job, and then he interviews and he blew us away. For his he had never been a head coach, for his age, the experience, the confidence that came out. Obviously he's a person of integrity. His energy is important. We align on a lot of things, and but ultimately my job is to do what's best for Bronco Nation, right? My job is to do what's best for Boise State. And it made it, coming out of that interview, I'm like, oh man, like he could, like that was the first time that I'm like, I very well already may have my guy. And that week I had already promised, our team and everyone involved in the search, I'm not making a decision going in, or I may make a decision, but I'm not announcing anything until we get through this Mountain West Championship game. The fact that we had a less than 1% chance to get there, and we get there, and this would have been the first freshman class, I think, that had gone all 4 years that had not won a Mountain West Championship, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
That game was important to us for many other reasons, mainly for the student athletes. And that Thursday, which I've said publicly, at 12:15 on that Thursday leading into the Mountain West Championship game is when I made the decision that Spencer was my guy. And not easy, and there are no guarantees in life, right? Well, there are very few, but I truly felt head, heart, and gut had aligned, and I felt like he gave us the best opportunity to be elite. And you'd mentioned, the student athletes, what type of voice, I don't want to say they didn't necessarily have a seat at the table, but I'm not immune to how the student athletes were responding, how we were showing up for games, the success we were having, the culture of the program, how quickly it turned. And you're watching, I'm human, like you have to watch those things, right? Does it impact it? It doesn't hurt it, but it's not like, oh, and the kids like him. Like anytime you make a change like that, traditionally the student athletes may like it, right? And so I had to be cognizant of that, but especially some of the older guys, I'm always asking questions of my staff, the committee we had, my mentors, other people, the search firm, and people I call friends, and making sure I'm aligned. But then I'm also talking to these kids that maybe had been under Hars and Andy and now Spence for a few games, and you are taking feedback, and that was important for me. Just the more information you can have when you're making a decision like that that's so impactful, the better off you're going to be. I wanted an extremely tough decision, and that's what I was faced with. We had an unbelievable candidate pool, and I won't go into all the details of who was involved, but we had an unbelievable candidate pool, and I wanted a tough decision. But like I said before, everything happens for a reason, and the way that all transpired, I don't believe in accidents, and it just really aligned with my head, heart, and gut at that moment, that I felt ultimately one way or another I'm going to be held accountable, and I realized, and I can't think about that. There's no perfection in this, and when all those things aligned, it's I'm a ready and fire type guy, and it's like, this is my guy, and I'll take whatever comes with it. And I'm really grateful that he had patience through the process. I'm really grateful that our staff supported our student athletes the way they did, and that Bronco Nation showed up, and I can't tell you how much that means to our student athletes, not much less myself and our staff, but what that means to our student athletes, the positive reinforcement, and that Bronco Nation had our back. And that's what being a Bronco is. That's what being a part of this family is. And it was just really cool to go through that. And like most things, however hard it started, it ended, what I would say, in an epic form, or an epic fashion. That was a season that, prior to the change, that everyone was saying was the worst season, since we were in FBS. And to go from that to, what I consider epic, even though we didn't win every game and whatever else, but the fact that we had a less than 1% chance, and you go and compete and you win a Mountain West Championship. And I'll never forget that year. I'll never forget that team. I'll never forget that staff. Most are here, some have gone. And Andy was a big part of that. He brought in a lot of those guys, and so credit is due across the board. Nothing happens as an individual in this industry. And it was just really really impactful for me as a leader, and especially during a very uncomfortable time, that to see how it started and versus how it ended.
Well, like you said, Spencer Danielson takes the reign as interim. There's a complete change in energy. You go through, win the Mountain West Championship game, gets named the head coach officially, and now there is so much excitement coming into the future for Boise State. He has fully lived up to that role. He's brought in some incredible transfers. He's done some incredible things with the program so far, and there's a lot of excitement for this season and what the future holds for Boise State. But in the midst of that excitement, there's still a lot of questions with the way that conference realignment works out, the way that different challenges hit the group of five. So if you were to look at Boise State and look at what their biggest challenges were in the short and long term that you're having to attack, what would you say those challenges are? What are the biggest challenges for Boise State right now as a program in the short and long term?
The positive is they've been pretty consistent since the day I arrived. I've been dealing with realignment, name, image, and likeness, collectives, Title IX, you name it. Changing of an industry that's in, we're in uncharted waters. There are no guardrails, and we're trying to define that. And, similar to a NASCAR race, like it's not like you can continue to go around the track and change your oil. And that's what we're trying to do. And it can get messy sometimes. And so it is uncomfortable, but it is what it is. Over time, that uncomfortableness grows into confidence. And, ultimately those things still hold true for the next 3 to 5 years. There's a lot of talk of football breaking away, and whatever happens with ACC and what happens with the Pac-2, and those are things that obviously my job is to stay ahead of. I can control some, but not all of that process. Just because I believe doesn't mean others believe the same in terms of our future, and obviously I'm bullish on it.
Hmm.
But when I look at the next 3 to 5 years, my job is to best position us for what's next in this industry, whether that's conference realignment or football breaking away from the model and developing something different than what we know today. We have to, which is challenging, but I have to have plan A through Z, and those ground balls are being run out on a daily basis. It's something I think about. This job is 24/7, and I don't take it lightly because it's personality wise, it's just not who I am. I want to do what's best for Boise State, and and I'm not saying everything we have done or are going to do is going to work, but what I can promise is effort and attitude, and we're going to find a solution. There's always one, and we just got to figure it out. As we look at revenue share and collectives and NIL, that space is changing. There's still a number of lawsuits. Everyone talks about House. There's probably 6 or 7, if not more, other lawsuits that we're tracking on. Ties into antitrust, ties into employment, it ties into FLSA. The lawsuits are endless, and I would expect more lawsuits to come, and we still have a lot of unanswered questions. How is Title IX going to be impacted? And the collective bargaining piece, House settled some, but not all, and we're still a sport program that I'm very passionate about our 18 sport programs, and I want to be a lead in all of the above. And how do we do that across all of our Olympic sport programs? What football has done over the past 20 plus years. I want us to be the program that when people look at the preseason rankings or preseason within the conference, I should say, not necessarily rankings, but preseason rankings, that it's like, oh, Boise State football, Boise State volleyball, Boise State soccer, Boise State men's and women's basketball. Like, we're top 2 or 3 in every category and going into a season. To me, that may be a lofty expectation, but why can't we do that? And why can't we take what football did and utilize that to really build up our other sport programs and figure out a better path forward, that ultimately allows me to effectively serve 350 plus student athletes. And I think that's something that we've brought to the table over the past 3.5 years. And with some of the announcements we've made, it's not just football and everything else. It's 18 sport programs. Doesn't mean football isn't maybe more important, because we understand the value and the revenue that it brings in and how it helps us fund the department. But I want our volleyball players to have, a similar experience. I want them to know that we love and care about them, and that Bronco Nation does. And they have. I mean, we're selling out volleyball matches. We're selling out soccer matches. We had a packed house for beach volleyball. They only played once or twice, because of the weather. We had a packed house for them. We had the highest attendance in our gymnastics history. I mean, we're doing really good things across the board, and that's a testament to our team and the fact that they've embraced this vision and direction, and that Bronco Nation has stepped up and backed us.
In those murky conference realignment waters, if you had to stand up and make your, and I'm sure you do, make your pitch for Boise State on what they offer a Power Four or Power Two or whatever, what do you highlight? Not to necessarily go into every detail and give away every secret, but what is it that you highlight about Boise State and its culture, if you were to make that pitch?
It goes without saying that our history speaks for itself, and we're in the infant stages of growth. People don't necessarily talk about that, but we went from being a JUCO to an FCS to an FBS, and there's schools out there celebrating their 100th anniversary. I mean, we're babies in all of this, but you see what football's been able to do, and the success of our other sport programs. Our success speaks for itself. If you put everything down on paper based on what we have versus everyone else, and then you compare the success, it's mind blowing. Like, there's no reason that we should have the success that we've had, and we're very fortunate. We've had some unbelievable leaders come through this department and lead our men and women, and we've had unbelievable donor support, and we've had a community that's embraced us, and that's really positive. And so, yeah, the success of our programs, and I think our history is important, but I also know whoever we are today, we're going to be different tomorrow. And when you look at the Treasure Valley, you look at our state and the growth, and you look at the people moving in, and I understand media markets and all of that, but we do have a national brand, and people they tune in when we play. And there's a reason that we would get those late time slots, and that's part of that brand. And I think if you're making decisions on who someone is today and not necessarily what it will be or who they will be 5-10 years from now, I think you're doing everyone a disservice. And that's something I try to get across, that I get it. I understand what our media market is, and I understand the location and where we're at, and how that can be challenging for some conferences, but we can find success, and we are investing, and which is why it's so important to tell our story, and we're not a finished product, and you're going to see a completely different institution and athletic department 3 to 5 years from now, and that's going to be consistent as long as I'm here. We're going to continue to grind and put ourselves in the best possible position, and that means living out the innovation that we inherited. What Gene did with that blue turf, was pretty remarkable, because no one else had done it. Yeah, and that's something, like, you can say you're innovative, but if you're not living that out in action, then it means nothing. And that's where you're seeing our team really embrace that. All right, let's be innovative. Let's not wait for others to do it. Let's be the first. And let's figure out how we create a better path. And a lot of that has to do with resources. And ultimately, it's, the path of least resistance is, well, just don't lose, right? Win in everything and whatever. But that's not the reality. It's a combination of all of the above. We have to find success. We have to continue to invest into our facilities. We have to continue to not necessarily grow our staff. I mean, there's certain areas that we need to elevate, but we need to invest in our staff. We need to continue to develop them and teach them to be leaders, and that's a big part of our infrastructure. And so there are no guarantees, but there is a method to the madness. When you look at the What's Next initiative, the Playbook for Success, the brand assessment, the infrastructure that we've built, you also have to be prepared when that success happens. And I believe that 3 to 5 years in our industry is going to determine the next 20. And, we have to be on the forefront of that. And that means that we, in some ways, you don't have any guarantees in this. In some ways, you just got to put yourself out on that limb. That limb may break, and that's fine. That will be on me, and it will hit me, and I'll take responsibility, because, I believe that's what a leader should be. And, but I can't say enough about our team and the support that we receive. Why can't we do epic? I always go back to that. Why can't we? And if more people believe that we can, the possibilities are endless, and that's important to me, and that's something that doesn't necessarily keep me up at night, but it fires me up. It gets me excited every day to come into work and say, what's next? Yeah, we did this. That's great. What's next? We have to keep going, and we're going to continue to do that.
Well, the final question that I have as we're running to the end of our time here is just simply, what's next? What has you the most excited for Boise State in the immediate future? Either a project that's coming up or a project you're working on. Just tomorrow, when you wake up, what's next for Boise State that you're excited about?
I am excited to see how everything plays out in realignment, because I think that creates opportunities in the future. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about, and others may not be as excited. I'm excited because resources are a challenge, and that's something that we work day and night on here. I'm excited to see how private equity and private capital and some of those things may impact our industry, and what does that look like in the future. Unfortunately, I can't go with my business plan down to Wells Fargo, street and say, hey, look, like I got this plan and I just need an extra X amount of dollars. That's just not how it works. But
Right.
that does excite me, because I do think there's opportunities. And as our industry changes and we're in these uncharted waters, I'm becoming more of a CEO than I am an athletic director. And we're starting to make more business decisions, and holding on to what's most important to us, our student athletes and their experience, and preparing them for life and in the academic space. And those things really excite me. Early on it was uncomfortable, and I maybe wasn't as excited, because I'm like, what is going on? I've been I spent my 20 plus years in trying to get to this chair, and then I get here and everyone's like, well, whatever we did before, we're not doing again. And here's this new model, and we don't know really what it looks like, and figure it out. But ultimately, you I went back to my whiteboard and said, all right, if there are no rules around this, what if I could start over, what would we do? And how could we best present ourselves? And I know 5 to 10 years from now, we'll look back and say, wow, remember when, and to have a seat at that table, and to be a part of something like that. That's really exciting for what I can still consider myself young. I'm getting old now, but for a young administrator, that's really cool. And I'm excited to see what becomes of it. I know there's too much value in our industry that it's not going away. It's just, where's our place in it? And I think that's important when we look to the future for our Broncos. We can do it. It's going to take a team, and I'm bullish on what this looks like. And it starts now. Soccer kicked us off, but starting off 1-0, and obviously this is an important football year. It's an important basketball year. It's important volleyball. I mean, all of our sports matter. And at the beginning of a year, you're so hopeful, and it's everyone's undefeated, and you have these grand plans, and around the thing you can't control wins. And I believe in what our teams are doing, what they did in the off season, and it doesn't mean we're going to be undefeated and everything, but I believe we're positioned for a lot of success, on and off the field this year. And as an AD and as a leader, traditionally you are thinking 5 to 10 years out, but because of the chaos in our industry, I'm a year to 3 years out, even though I do think about 5 to 10, but I can't overwhelm the system. And so, I have our team concentrating on this year and the next 3. And what does it look like coming out of that? And I'm excited about that.
Well, if you want to be part of that exciting future for Boise State, Bronco Nation, make sure that you're investing in these programs. Make sure you're investing in the NIL, which of course is a big part of that modern movement with the Horseshoe Collective. Make sure you're investing into the BAA, either directly through the BAA or through the Blue Collar Club or through Blue Elevation. I'll put links to all of those in the description of the video. And of course, most important, buying those season tickets. We are so close to, do you have an update on how close we are to that
I
20,000
don't.
number?
I need to
Okay.
ask. Usually we put out an update on Tuesday, but when you said that earlier, I need to call our guys and see where we're at. They usually text me, but I've been in and out of meetings all day, so
Okay.
I'll probably have an email sitting somewhere.
All right. Well, we'll all look forward to that Jeremiah Dickey tweaks. They're always great anyway. But 20,000 tickets is coming. We are close. So keep buying those season tickets, Bronco Nation. Again, this is not a season you want to miss out on, because not only is there a lot of excitement for the season itself and the fans and the team, but the stadium experience is just getting better and better every single game with what Jeremiah Dickey and his team are doing. So thank you so much, everybody, for sticking all the way to the end. Thank you so much, Jeremiah, for coming. And I really appreciate you coming and giving us your time here.
Thank you, Jacob. And I appreciate you having me on. Go Broncos.
Absolutely, go Broncos. Again, everybody, thanks so much for watching all the way to the end. Make sure you join Bronco Nation updates. And as always, go Big Blue!